ESB, proud sponsors of About the House.
In this last episode of About the House, I'll be looking at issues and solutions for owners of both new and old houses as we move forward into the future. As we move into the future, there are two distinct challenges facing us in terms of the homes we choose to live in. One concerns new houses and the other older buildings. Any new homes we build will be required to be carbon neutral by 2013. This means that they will need to be built to such a high standard and free of fossil fuel use for heating. The task facing us with older homes is to find a way of making these buildings more energy efficient, especially with historic homes not compromising the integrity of their intrinsic heritage features. The projects I'm following in this episode exemplify these two issues that will be facing nearly all of us as we continue forwards. In this first project, I'll be revisiting Fiona Nolan and Raymond Keane and seeing how their passive house standard build turned out in the pioneering eco-village in Cloughjordan. And I'll also be looking at the village project itself to learn more about how it was founded and how it's progressing. The founders of the eco-village chose their site very carefully. It's at a train station, and the existing village is a wonderful example of somewhere that has retained its character and integrity, despite the unrestrained building splurge of the Celtic Tiger years, and it's also surrounded by natural resources. The founders of the eco-village have always been in constant dialogue with the original inhabitants of Cloughjordan and wanted to make sure that they were fully integrated with it. This is why they incorporated a path which linked the new eco-village directly with the centre of the old village street, as shown on their original drawings. And their eco-village itself is now well underway, with 40 houses at various stages of being built. In this episode, I'll be looking at the range of sustainable and energy-efficient houses being built there. Are they prototypes of what we'll be building soon? And I'll be finding out if the project has been affected by the economic meltdown. But before that, I'll be having a quick look back at the challenges that face Fiona and Raymond during the build of their passive house we featured last year. Changing your home and completely transforming your lifestyle isn't something that always comes easy. I'm here in Churchtown to meet a couple who are about to pack up and leave Dublin City for much greener pastures. Fiona and Raymond were planning to make the dramatic move from urban Dublin to the eco-village in Cloughjordan and move towards a completely sustainable way of living. Well, Fiona, Raymond, this is a big change, going down to Cloughjordan from Dublin.
Yes.
Why are we making such a big change?
We'd heard about the village project and we were interested but really didn't explore it very much. We went down for what was called an experience day, and really as soon as I heard what it was, I just felt myself, and I think Raymond felt the same. This is the way I wanted to live.
Fiona is a group therapist and Raymond runs his own successful theatre company, and both were tied to their jobs in Dublin. But both of them had plans for moving their careers down to Cloughjordan.
It may take me a little while to move lock, stock and barrel, if you like, but nowadays you can run a business from anywhere now, and it might be a really nice place actually to run a theatre company from, because we will have facilities within Cloughjordan as well, even within the existing town, but also within our village as time goes by.
We are building into the house a group room in the front, so I would hope to work from there.
It was going to be a big change for them, and I was curious to go and see the eco-village itself. Building to passive house standards was still pretty new to Ireland when Fiona and Raymond were taking it on. I had a chat with their architect Paul McNally about the challenges ahead. What is your biggest challenge, Paul?
Getting to grips with the technology of building a passive house. It's still new territory, even for myself and for anybody in this field. So working with the Passive House Institute in Germany to get the detailing right, to eliminate cold bridging, get the air tightness detailing correct.
You're building a passive house and it's A-rated. Is it A2 or which rating is it going to be?
Probably A2, yeah.
A2. That's what you've, you know, obviously that's very important that you get that, Fiona. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
It was going to be difficult for everyone concerned with the project to raise it to the demanding standards required by the Passive House Institute. But the team were working hard and the build was moving along fast. With the timber frame they were using, the whole structure was up in only 3 days. Under Paul's direction, Fiona and Raymond's build seemed to be moving along pretty smoothly. But when I went back for my second visit to see how things were going on, I found out that they had some bad news.
In the last couple of weeks, the last air pressure test has taken place, and it doesn't quite come up to the standard of the institute in Germany, the Passive House Institute, who are certifying the house. We're a little bit worried because if we don't get the certification, all the extra money we will have spent will have been a bit of a waste. Our margins for this house are very tight. We're not prepared to spend any more money.
So it looked like everything they'd worked for might all have been in vain.
Well, we're hoping that when Paul comes back this will all be resolved, because really we're very close to certification standard.
Their architect, Paul, was away on honeymoon, so they'd no other option but to wait. But when I was down the next time, it seemed like what they'd hoped for had become a reality. I believe you got some good news for Fiona and Raymond.
Yeah, well, we're delighted that the Passive House Institute have finally confirmed that they're happy with the results and how the house is performing.
Right, so how have we achieved that? Because there was an issue there for Fiona and Raymond the last time I was down here.
Yeah, it was borderline how the house was going to perform, but the contractor put extra time into the air tightness. And the normal figure you would look for in a passive house is 0.6 in the air tightness, and we got that down to 0.5, and then that carried us over the line and satisfied the Passive House Institute.
So was there any time delays or any cost involved in this?
Mainly time. We're pushing hard to get them in by Christmas. That is the goal.
Fiona and Raymond didn't make it in by Christmas. All the extra work that had to be done to make the house very energy efficient meant that their build ended up being even more delayed. After the break, I'll be back in Cloughjordan a year later to hopefully see their finished house. And I'll be looking at the rest of the eco-village to see if this pioneering venture has worked out or not. Before that, I look at the other end of the building spectrum. Living in an old house with character right in the city centre can be very desirable, but restoring and refurbishing an old house may not be for everybody. A historic home can range from a vernacular cottage to an 18th century protected structure. Their numbers have now dwindled to only 10% of our housing stock, yet they are a critical part of our inheritance and legacy. The restoration work of these houses is a highly skilled art. Des, is restoration plasterwork like this, is it a specialist area?
It's becoming more and more a specialist area. There's a lot of knowledge lost and it's getting found again slowly but surely. Restoration is a site thing where you make it on site and you try to make the particular item you're making in the old way as much as is possible, using the old materials as much as possible.
And everything you're doing here really is like the old skills of 200 years ago.
Oh, well, it would be in general, yeah. I mean, we have little bits and pieces that we didn't have before, you know, but in general, yeah, it's pretty much the same. It hasn't changed much.
We're in a protected structure here, a historic house, and obviously the plasterwork is very critical to it. What's special about all of the plasterwork you're doing here?
Well, in this particular house, what we're doing is we're just restoring some damaged cornices and centerpieces, and we're basically rehabilitating some of the main walls in the house.
But even if the interior of the house isn't protected, it's important to make sure that the original plasterwork is restored correctly.
You have to have an appreciation of the skill that made this originally. It's a skill that has virtually died out. This is one of the original pieces of enrichment, and we're cleaning probably 150 to 200 years of paint off it to expose the detail in it. When we clean them down, we'll find the best one with the least damage and the most original detail, and we'll make a mould using that one as the template.
Another critical area is restoring roofs. It's preferable to match the original material, which in period structures is very often natural slate. Another important feature of the roof is the traditional use of lead or copper flashings in the valleys and hips. The lead is beaten down onto a wood core roll, which is fixed onto the hips. It's important for the lead to be toggled down to prevent the wind lifting it. The copper fixing at the top allows the lead to hang freely, enabling it to expand and contract to reduce stress fractures. And the patination oil that is applied to the lead stops it staining and discolouring the natural slates. But whilst this restoration work is important, the energy upgrading part of the work is equally essential if these old houses are not to become obsolete with rising energy costs.
Historic homes need a more sensitive approach to upgrading insulation than, say, a modern home. There needs to be an appropriate balance between energy efficiency and achieving and maintaining the historic character and integrity of the house.
After the break, I'll be looking at some of the modern products being used on period houses that aim to achieve this balance. And I'll be making a final visit to Cloughjordan to see Fiona and Raymond's finished house and see if the Cloughjordan Eco-Village project is succeeding in these difficult economic times.
ESB, proud sponsors of About the House. ESB, proud sponsors of About the House.
Before the break, I was looking at the issues facing anyone attempting to take on the restoration of an old house. Now I'm taking a look at the other side of the coin, making an old house energy efficient. But because of the historic character of these buildings, such as the external brickwork and the ornate plasterwork, these houses are much more limited in terms of what you can do with them. Insulating is much more complicated in an older historic house. On a protected brick structure, it's usually impossible to externally insulate, but even if it's not protected, it's generally unacceptable to cover up brickwork. So internally insulating solid external walls is the only option for old houses, but even then you must be very careful.
These houses were designed to breathe at the walls. The moisture from the outside air could move in and out through, whereas in a modern construction that doesn't happen. You have a cavity and the moisture gets in and runs off.
So the normal forms of dry lining are very often not suitable for historic houses, as they present a solid barrier which stops these buildings from breathing. One product I've found is
Calcitherm Climate Board. This is very suitable to historic houses because it's compatible with the original materials in the walls and with the restoration work going on in the plasterwork.
The other issue is air tightness. It's important to have an airtight layer on the inside of the insulation to stop moisture build-up in the structure, causing subsequent decay. However, most airtight layers intrinsically stop the breathing of the interior surfaces of the walls. Intellomembrane is a good way to minimise this problem, as whilst it's an airtight layer, it's also an intelligent membrane that allows the walls to breathe inwards in the summer months. New products to make older houses more energy efficient are emerging all the time. And it's important that we use them so that we can update these important buildings correctly and pass them on to future generations. I'm back in Cloughjordan a year after my last visit to finally see Fiona and Raymond's finished house and find out how their groundbreaking Eco-Village project is going.
Hello Fiona, hi, good to see you. Hi Raymond, lovely.
The house looked completely finished. Fiona had done a fantastic and tasteful job decorating it, and it looked really beautiful. The house was evidently ready for Fiona and Raymond's move to a new life and home. However, when I sat down to have a chat with them, the story didn't seem quite so positive.
Well, Fiona, Raymond, a year ago this was a building site and a lot has changed here. Over that year, how has it worked out for you?
Well, yeah, it's been a bit of a heartbreak in many ways. Raymond lost his funding.
Like all industries and businesses or whatever, you know what I mean, the arts world also has had to take a few steps backwards.
So has the downturn affected you?
We thought we would be living there, this would be our main base at this time, or certainly we'd be moving towards it. Now it seems it'll be maybe 2-3 years in the future.
But at least the energy efficient aspects of the house they'd fought for were working well.
When I came down this morning, there was frost on the road. It was very cold last night, and this is really warm. What's your heating working out like?
It's not up and running yet.
So you've no heating here?
There's no heating at the moment.
No.
Wow. Isn't that incredible?
It's amazing. We're sitting here, I can't believe it, you know, and I'm not cold.
So even though Fiona and Raymond weren't using their district heating system yet, as they hadn't been able to move in, their house was far warmer than a house would normally be on a cold winter's day. And the eco-village was integrating well with the existing village.
Lots of people who are members of the village and who have either already built their houses or in the process or will in the future have been living in Cloughjordan for the last 4, 5, 6 years. It's now beginning to connect up nicely, the local Cloughjordan and the new eco-village. You know, we're no longer the mad ones, you know, with this, you know, ridiculous dream. It's happening.
I wanted to see how the rest of the eco-village was faring. Greg Allen, a founding member, took me around to show me how it had moved on since I'd last seen it.
Greg, how's the eco-village developing here?
Well, within the current climate, we're actually doing very well. 12 residents have actually moved into their houses, and there's another 28 houses at varying stages of construction.
Are you doing more than just building houses here?
Well, very much so, yeah. What we're trying to do is to create a blueprint for sustainable living.
There's also a hostel and a community farm. And this will shortly be followed by an enterprise centre. The whole village is heated by a large solar park, the biggest of its kind in a domestic setup. This is backed up by a centralised wood chip boiler. All the heat is distributed through a district heating system, which is a vast network of insulated underground pipes supplying the houses. The idea is that once the eco-village is fully up and running, the residents will be completely self-sufficient. Any money there is will circulate within the village community of Cloughjordan. Every community in Ireland has the opportunity to do what Cloughjordan are doing. Currently, the average household takes €6,000 out of Ireland's economy each year, spending it on imported fuel and food. The key principles of sustainable communities are living close to work, highly insulated homes, fuel sourced locally, and thinking green in terms of food, by growing sustainably and buying local produce. We need to think of ourselves as small, local communities, rather than a global economy. By doing this, instead of sending this money out of our economy, we can keep this recirculating within our communities and so generate a potential 100,000 long-term jobs. This is the key to pulling ourselves back from the precipice we currently find ourselves at. It's not just the way in which the residents of Cloughjordan are living that's experimental, but the actual houses they will live in too. There's a wide variety of eco-builds, from hemp lime and wood, to even cob, made entirely from mud and straw. Are there many of these being built here?
At the moment, we have 3 of these houses under construction. And again, it's an old building technique that, again, we're trying to bring back in, but with modern technology as well. So where you super insulate the floor, the roof, and put in triple glazed windows to bring up the energy performance of the house. The cob itself is based on thermal mass, so it's about storing the heat in the walls. So it's slightly different than your normal, but again, it's a technique that has been used for hundreds of years, so we're looking at how we can actually adapt it into a modern context.
John Jopling, another resident, is building his house entirely from wood and hemp lime. John, how did you get involved now in the village project?
I joined about 7 years ago. And I was a barrister. I retired from work. And when you retire, there's 2 things you miss. One is the work, and the other is your chums, your workmates. So it's a natural for a retired person.
John is actually doing a lot of the carpentry himself.
The window ledges are made of beech from the local wood, and those are the boards I'm using for window ledges, door frames, doors.
So this table here, John, is this also beech?
It is, from local Knocknacree wood. It's never travelled more than a mile all its life.
And you designing now in an ecological way, what got you interested in that side?
I've always been ecologically minded. I mean, I've been a naturalist, so it's a natural for me to be part of an ecological project.
With so much life and activity going on in the eco-village, it seemed almost untouched by the current economic situation. So the downturn in the economy has affected everybody in the country. There seems to be a vibrancy still down here, and it seems to be very unaffected.
I don't think it would be true to say that it hasn't affected people at all here, because in reality people still need to get mortgages to build. All sorts of people have been affected by employment, including ourselves. But on the other hand, I suppose you wouldn't engage in a project like this unless you in some way were hopeful. Believe that something could be better.
Watching my community, let's call it the theatre community or the creative community, face that and find creative ways out of it, you really begin to see, you know, when people cooperate, you know, with, I suppose, similar ideals, but also a willingness to change those ideals.
The interesting thing about this project is that it's people doing something as a community. So, I mean, just think about that.
Well, even though Raymond and Fiona have been affected by the downturn like so many other people, it's great to see them as part of this community that's positively pulling together to face the future. And that's the final episode of About the House for this year. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you again next year. If you're interested in being featured on next year's series of About the House, particularly if you've been creative with the space you have, please fill in an application form on our website.
ESB, proud sponsors of About the House.